So I have the distinct honor and privilege of introducing Curtis Ravenel, Global Head of Sustainable Business and Finance for Bloomberg. Curtis leads Bloomberg's sustainability initiatives, which integrate sustainability considerations into all facets of the firm, from the silverware to the food to everything you can imagine. Curtis also leads and leverages Bloomberg's terminal as the go-to source for investors to evaluate a wide array of sustainability factors, including financially material risks and opportunities. But even this bio doesn't do it justice. Curtis puts his values into practice to get things done. He gets things done. Ranging from his leadership role as the internal sustainability challenges, he walks the talk. To his championing work of SASB, he walks the talk. To his leadership role for the Task Force on Climate-Related Disclosures that you'll hear, TCFD, more about shortly, he walks the talk. Curtis is a mover and shaker in the sustainability movement. If you are a CEO, you need to hear what Curtis has to say. If you're an investor, you need to know what Curtis says about the current and future state of ESG information. And if you're a concerned citizen, you need to get up to speed on Bloomberg's pioneering work with the TCFD, SASB, and the multitude of other sustainability initiatives that Curtis will talk about shortly. Even though Curtis will hate this intro, it's my honor and privilege to welcome him to the stage.
Thanks. Thanks, buddy. Mark's right, I really don't like that intro. But I will pay you later for all of the compliments that were not well deserved. I know many of you in the room, and I've worked with you over the years, and I'm glad to be here. For those of you that don't know me, I am lucky that I work at such an institution that takes this stuff seriously. And I'll even start by just the title. You know, we used to be the sustainability group, but we changed it to Sustainable Business and Finance. And we did that because, you know, it is a business and financial issue first and foremost, right? So we want to emphasize that, yes, Bloomberg, Mike Bloomberg especially, has a tremendous philanthropic presence in the world, and philanthropy is a very important thing. But having the business and financial community behind these issues is a more important thing. And it's not necessarily, you know, altruistic, let's be honest. We have found real value in integrating sustainability considerations into everything that we do, operations as well as products and services. And on the flip side, I also think that sustainability considerations more broadly could stand a good dose of business and financial sense. And so in order to do that, I feel very lucky that our group gets to play in all the sandboxes of Bloomberg, both his philanthropic efforts, his on the products and services, as well as the operations, as we said. And so primarily, you know, we do look at sustainability across our business lines, right? And notice I'm not actually putting up the operations stuff that Mark talked about. We do a whole bunch of solar deals and wind and lead buildings, et cetera. But really, we are about our customers. We have 3 primary business lines, for those of you who don't know. Obviously, the Bloomberg terminal is the mothership. We call it the sun, of which the rest of these things orbit, moons orbit. And then we have what's called off-terminal or verticals, Bloomberg New Energy Finance, Government, and B&A. And then, of course, there's the media business. And all of these businesses cover these issues, not because it's the right thing to do, but because there's value in it. As much as we like to think that Mike is this giant philanthropist, there's a reason that he became so wealthy, is because he puts business first. And he doesn't build products and services because it's a nice thing to do. He builds them because customers demand them. And so this really is, to me, a tipping point on where we are, in that all of our business units are covering these issues in depth. So just quickly on some, I know the title of my talk is about trends, and many of you know all this stuff, but for those of you that do not, you know, you have some mega trends. And a lot of this is being driven by the golden rule, which is he with the gold rules, and the asset owners, who are by nature more longer-term investors, are looking at longer-term trends. And as universal owners, people who own stocks, bonds, et cetera, financial instruments, often for long periods of time are saying some of that value is at risk, and it could be existential. And so I want to understand what the long-term, I want to understand what my asset managers are doing to try and mitigate that risk or manage that risk or seize the flip side of the opportunity. And so you have a tremendous amount of money basically moving into a space that looks at various ESG or what we call broadly sustainable investing, right? That could be anywhere from thematic investment opportunities to negative screening for companies or sectors that they think are really at risk in the long run, or ESG integration, environmental, social, and governance, using that as a proxy for how well a firm is managed. This is a megatrend. And some of it is a result also of some of the output of that, for better or for worse, for firms that are not responding by providing the information that investors need to try to make a decision about how to price these properly. You see a rise in increased shareholder proposals to try to force that. There are, and there are more than this, but there's two particular projects that Bloomberg has been involved with, and we call it, yes, they're philanthropic investments, but they're also business investments. And I don't have a problem with that. I actually think that that's a good thing because these are public goods that are also good for Bloomberg and good for the market. It's about building market infrastructure, and it's needed. And I'll talk a little bit. I'm not going to talk as much about SASB because we have them next, but I'll talk more about how we see the world. And Mark has seen this slide a million times, and it probably needs some minor updating. But one of the challenges is, of course, in the emerging field of sustainability or sustainable information, you want 1,000 flowers to bloom. You want experimentation. You want to see what the different needs and wants are. But at some point, in order for an industry to really reach escape velocity or become widely adopted, you need a little bit of convergence, right? And all of these groups, and there are many more, and I apologize for those of you in the room who are not on the board, there are many more. They do focus on various things, but they also compete sometimes with each other, and it can confuse the marketplace. And so we've got to understand sort of what are the primary issues. Bloomberg supports all these organizations, but we're focused on these two for a reason. And it's really about the shift to materiality. For Bloomberg, Bloomberg serves the financial community. Everyone in the financial community should care about materiality. We think it reminds me of the running joke that Peter Grauer and I used to have when we would do talks. He would say things like, we've embarked on the sustainable journey because it's the right thing to do and it makes good business sense. And I used to just implore him to stop saying it that way. Please say, we've embarked on this journey because it makes good business sense and it's the right thing to do. Because when it makes good business sense, you can cast a much wider net and capture a much more investment. There are plenty of people who don't really care personally about these issues, but they care when there's evidence of financial impact or performance from their investment or within their company. So a part of this movement, and a lot of this frankly is because of the pioneering work of SASB, who really began to focus on materiality as the lens from which to view this wide range of sustainability issues. The TCFD is also formed, it's a terrible name, the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure. It's a mouthful. But anything that the FSB, which is the Financial Stability Board, does is very, very carefully considered. The Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure. They're basically signaling that they believe that are issues, climate-related issues that have financial impact that should be disclosed in financial filings and therefore should be considered material. The G20 finance ministers asked the central bank governors to take a look at climate-related risks in the financial system and sector. Okay, I want to be clear that the FSB then looked at the model they had for the Enhanced Disclosure Task Force, which they created after the financial crisis, and said, how do we do this? Industry-led, industry-only, recommend disclosures that could help investors, lenders, insurers, and others, providers of capital, make more informed investment decisions, but at the same time allow an information flow that could avert a potential systemic risk But that is really for the central bankers to decide, not for the task force. A lot of people think the task force is looking at systemic financial risk. We're not. We're looking at disclosures and how they promote more informed investment decision making, right? And I think this focus on financial impact is key, and frankly, it's an area where we still have a fair amount of work to do. And the idea was to create some kind of common taxonomy around risks and opportunities in climate and find a way to demonstrate the connection between strategic planning, financial impact, and then, of course, income statement, cash flow, balance sheet, et cetera. This is the language of the financial community, and some of this is the language of the people interested in climate, and the same with ESG. How do we connect the dots? How do we do that, right? So we decided to develop a set of recommendations that were framed in a way that we thought were consistent with the way businesses work anyway, around governance, strategy, and risk management, and metrics. We don't want this to be another disclosure framework that adds to the plethora of already existing ones, but really takes from the best work that has been done by years by others and really looks for evidence of financial impact and integrate it into existing processes. Anyone who serves on a board or is in senior management knows that there's not enough time in the day to do their day-to-day job. You cannot create a separate process for something. It will die on the vine. It's got to be integrated in the way that you do business, right? You know, the benefits, in our view of this, it really is about benefits. We have to look at cost-benefit analysis. You can't add a lot of work for these folks. But it's really about increasing investors' confidence and that the company's climate-related risks and opportunities are properly assessed and managed. And the view is, you know, if people don't understand how a company's strategy is positioned for the long term, I think there is a large and increasing number of investors that are just have other opportunities and places to put their capital, and they will. This awareness and understanding of climate-related risks and opportunities overall, we like to say that because it was Mike Bloomberg and Governor Carney, that they have elevated an issue to board and senior managers around the world to an audience that has not seen it before. And that alone is of value. And if we can get this on the agenda of the major boards, really on the agenda of major boards and senior management, that alone is a victory. You know, there are other, we think, better risk management, more informed strategic planning. And this last one is important. You know, that increase in shareholder activism, I guess you could call it, is real and it's not going away. And this information is needed for them to make more informed decisions. And we think, especially for these capital-intensive industries, where you have this dramatic decline in technology costs and high likelihood, despite here in the US, of increased policy action to ratchet down carbon, that it's a good chance that things are going to change, and that if you're making a long-term investment, 20, 30 years, in buildings, in wells, in any kind of capital-intensive power plants, that you need to think about these issues, and you need to be resilient to whichever the way the world goes. So, you know, in closing, I want to reemphasize that for Bloomberg, we care about the whole range of sustainability issues. Mike, obviously, as a mayor, cares about the health of New York City residents and others, and made it a very personal issue. But when it comes to LP, we focus on materiality primarily, because that's where the rubber hits the road for us, and where, frankly, it works for us and our products. And so this is maybe a somewhat confusing map, but I think it's actually important. You know, we're lucky in the sense that we understand issuers' perspective as well as the investor perspective. And then, of course, we have to look more broadly at the market. We sit at this intersection. We collect data from everyone on everything, and we put it out to everybody else the other way. And so we think we're uniquely positioned in that way. And I think people, to try and understand these larger issues, I think of sustainability as huge, broad sustainability issues, with the audience being multi-stakeholders, vendors, governments, employees, academics, the communities in which we live and work, right? And then there are climate-related issues that are very similar to that, which is a subset of these larger sustainability issues. But then within that, there are the ones that actually show evidence of financial impact. And that's the work that SASB's done and the work that the TCFD has done. SASB, of course, is all ESG, but it's got a very U.S. Focus. It can be globally applied, but it's based on finding evidence that supports the SEC's rulings on it. And the TCFD is global, but focused directly on climate. And so these two efforts have been important to us, and we actually think that the investment, and obviously Mike made a fortune on taking asymmetric information and making it consumable to a broad audience. We think that this piece of information is exactly like it was for him in the bond markets in the late 70s and early 80s, providing transparency, providing structure, providing rigorous, evidence-based information to investors to help them make more informed decision making. It's the same thing that we've done in the past. And it's great to see all of these people here today, because we're going to see, I think, a number of firms taking a look at longer term plans, which require longer term thinking, which require information to allow them to think about that. So thank you all for being here.